Margin call shows us what happens inside an investment firm when everything falls apart. A junior discovers the firm's investments are so toxic that it could go bankrupt soon. From that moment, every person in the chain, from analysts to the CEO, faces a choice. Do they protect the truth or protect themselves? Do they save their jobs or the world? This movie shows us the ladder of greed that exists in every system. Every person plays a part, but not everyone is equally guilty. Let's see this ladder and observe the evolution of greed as power increases in the system. Level 1. Peter Sullivan. At the bottom of this ladder is Peter Sullivan, the analyst who first discovers the problem. He's not greedy in the traditional sense. He's smart, focused, and curious. He doesn't dream of a bigger bonus or a new car. His greed, if we can call it that, is intellectual, the desire to know. Peter once worked as a rocket scientist, but he left because, as he admits, the money's better in investment banking. It shows that even he isn't immune to the basic pull of greed. But his version is small and relatable, the kind of greed most of us have when we chase higher pay. It's ambition, not exploitation. When he realizes the company's sitting on a ticking time bomb, he doesn't think, how can I profit from this? He thinks, how do I stop this from destroying everything? That's what makes him level 1. He's part of the machine, but he still believes in reason and truth. Peter represents people who enter any ambitious career thinking skill and logic are enough to survive. He hasn't learned yet that morality and money rarely coexist in that world. His greed is almost innocent, the kind that still believes in solving problems instead of exploiting them. Peter's intellectual curiosity is a luxury the system can't afford. It quickly gets crushed by the next level of greed, the fear of survival. Level 2. Seth Bregman. Seth Bregman is the next step up. He's young, obedient, and nervous. He doesn't want to change the world, he just wants to keep his job. That's what makes his form of greed so common and dangerous. It's not about chasing more, it's about not losing what little you have. When Eric Dale just gets fired and is leaving, Seth even asks him about whether his job is going to be safe or not.
Eric, I'm very sorry.
Yeah. Did they say what was going to happen with us?
Jesus, Seth. What?
It's gonna get pretty ugly around here for a while. You guys will be all right.
Good luck, Eric.
Seth doesn't make decisions, he follows them. He's not rich or ruthless, but he's complicit. He represents the millions of people who see something wrong but stay silent because speaking up might end their careers. This is fear-based greed, the greed of survival. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you, just go along, don't risk it. Seth shows that greed doesn't always come from ambition. Sometimes it comes from insecurity or losing comfort, and that fear is exactly what the powerful depend on to keep the system running. The fear of losing everything is the fertile ground in which a more cynical, pragmatic greed grows. Level 3. Will Emerson, the realist. As we move up, we meet Will Emerson. He's sharp, experienced, and brutally honest. He knows the game and accepts it. Will doesn't pretend the system is fair, he just plays it better than most. His greed isn't blind, it's practical. He knows everyone's out for themselves, so he decides to be smarter about it. He doesn't brag about morals or ethics. To him, greed is the fuel that keeps the engine alive. Will's line in the movie is, "They do not lose money. They don't care if everyone else does, but they don't."
When all is said and done, they do not lose money. They don't mind if everybody else does, but they don't lose.
It captures his worldview. It's not about right or wrong, it's that he understands the rules of this rigged game. His mindset is of acceptance. Unlike Seth, Will isn't scared, he's numb. He's what happens when people stay in the system long enough to stop questioning it. At his level, greed becomes a philosophy. If you don't take advantage, someone else will. And that belief prepares us for the next step, where greed becomes personal and emotional. Once you accept the game as rigged, the next step isn't to reject it, but to get better at playing it to become an opportunist. Level 4. Sam Rogers, the opportunist. Sam Rogers is the middle point where conscience still exists but no longer wins. He's not driven by money alone. His greed is emotional loyalty, pride, and control. Sam knows what's about to happen is wrong. He knows that selling worthless assets will destroy lives. Yet he still leads his team into the fire sale. Why? because he wants to protect his people and his place in the system. In his mind, he's doing damage control, not evil. That's how most moral compromises happen, not from cruelty, but from rationalization. Sam convinces himself he's being realistic. He tells himself the decision is above him, then it's not his fault. That's why he keeps saying, "I'm with the firm."
Well, John, I am completely with the firm as I always have been. Excuse me.
This is the level where greed hides behind good intentions. It says, "I'm doing this for the greater good," when in reality, it's about preserving identity and security. Sam shows the tragedy of middle management everywhere. People torn between ethics and orders who choose to obey because the cost of rebellion feels too high. His loyalty looks noble, but it's still greed in disguise. The greed to belong, to keep what's his. After the fire sale, when John Tuld asks him to stay for 2 more years to help rebuild the firm, Sam finally drops the mask. He tells him, "I'll stay, John. Not for your little speech, but I need the money." Hard to believe it after all these years, but I need the money.
I'll do it, John, but not because of your little speech, but because I need the money. Hard to believe after all these years, but I need the money.
It's the confession of a man defeated by the very system he served. All the talk of loyalty and pride fades away. Sam's greed isn't for luxury or status anymore, it's for continuity. He spent his entire life inside this world, and without it, he's nothing. The firm may be rotten, but it's the only place he knows how to exist. Sam isn't staying out of belief or duty. He's staying because, after everything, he realizes he's just like everyone else. The difference between Sam and the next level is that Sam feels guilty. But guilt doesn't erase his participation. While Sam is tormented by his conscience, the higher you climb, the less room there is for such feelings. Level 5. Sarah Robertson, the Enabler. At this level, greed becomes colder and more structured. It's no longer emotional or impulsive. It's organized, calculated, and hidden behind layers of professionalism. That's where Sarah Robertson stands. Sarah is the Chief Risk Management Officer of the firm, one of the most important people in the building. Her job is to make sure the company doesn't take on more financial risk than it can handle. On paper, she's the safeguard, the one meant to prevent exactly the kind of disaster that is now unfolding. But instead of stopping it, she became part of it. Sarah was the one who fired Eric Dale, the head of the risk management department, a man who had worked at the firm for 19 years. Eric wasn't just another employee, he was one of the few who truly understood the numbers buried deep inside the company's balance sheets. A year before the crisis, he went to Sarah to warn her that the firm's investments were dangerously overleveraged.
Robertson? I knew it. I knew I should have gone to her last year.
Wasn't anyone.
Instead of listening, she dismissed him. Not because she didn't believe him, but because believing him would mean admitting the system was flawed, and admitting that could bring the entire house of cards down. So she did what the system rewards. She silenced the problem and fired the messenger. Sarah isn't driven by the desire for wealth or power in the obvious sense. Her greed is bureaucratic. It's the greed to keep the illusion of control alive, no matter what it costs. She protects the image of stability because that's what her position depends on. Sarah's intelligence and composure make her dangerous, not because she's evil, but because she knows exactly how to appear responsible while being part of the problem. Her form of greed is quiet, rational, and polite. It hides behind phrases like following protocol. She represents institutional greed, the kind that doesn't shout or brag, but whispers through conference calls and board meetings. It keeps corruption alive by following rules selectively. Without people like Sarah, reckless traders and executives couldn't operate for long. With her, they have the legitimacy they need to keep going. So while Sam Rogers' greed comes from emotion and loyalty, Sarah's comes from control and compliance. She doesn't start the fire, but she fires the firefighter, then files the report that says everything is under control. From the quiet enabler, we move to the open manipulator, for whom crisis is not a threat, but an opportunity. Level 6. Jared Cohen, the Manipulator. Here, greed becomes open and strategic. Jared Cohen is the executive who treats crisis as opportunity. He doesn't panic, he plans. When others worry about consequences, he calculates profits. He knows the firm will destroy relationships and trust by selling off toxic assets, but that doesn't matter because to him, the goal is survival, and survival means winning. His greed is pure efficiency. At this level, morality isn't even in the conversation. Jared sees the world as a boardroom where everyone plays to win. Ethics, loyalty, and humanity, those are weaknesses. What matters is execution. He represents the type of person who thrives during chaos because they've detached from empathy. For Jared, the fire sale isn't a tragedy, it's a strategy. This is what happens when greed becomes intelligence without conscience. The system rewards him for being ruthless. The world calls it leadership, but it's just calculated self-interest with better vocabulary. And above Jared sits the man who created the game itself. At the very top, looking down on it all. The man who sees the entire ladder not as a moral failure, but as a natural order. Level 7, Tuld, the architect. At the top stands Tuld, the CEO. He's the embodiment of corporate greed. Calm, confident, and untouchable. He doesn't see what's happening as evil or good, he sees it as inevitable. To him, money is just a tool, and markets are just cycles. People win, people lose, and the game resets. He even says, "It's just money, it's made up." That sentence defines his philosophy. Greed's so deep it no longer feels like greed, it feels like the truth. Tuld isn't stressed by the collapse because he knows he'll survive it. He has power, connections, and control. He doesn't need to panic, he owns the panic. His greed isn't about numbers anymore, it's about dominance. The ability to decide who wins and who loses. He's beyond guilt or empathy. He understands the system is rotten and chooses to keep it that way because it benefits him. That's why he's the final boss of greed. Not because he's the loudest or most emotional, but because he's the calmest. The kind of calm that comes only when you've stopped pretending to care. Tuld's world is one where everything, including disaster, can be monetized. And in that world, his greed isn't a flaw, it's a skill. The ladder explained. When you look at these 7 levels together, you see a pattern that mirrors real life. Greed doesn't start with evil, it starts with small compromises. It begins when people stop asking questions and start protecting themselves. At the bottom, greed is fear. In the middle, it's pride. At the top, it's power. Each level justifies the next. The film simply shows that when greed becomes normalized, morality becomes irrelevant.